gentlemen, be a rosebud!
Behold! The power of magnetism! What would your finishing maneuver be called?
The circumcision.
Follow the buzzers!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast, the wrestling podcast where we review every segment of Raw and give you guys the wrestling news of the week. My name, if you guys are asking, which is quite important this week, is Turbo Tony, and we're here with absolutely nobody. I'm on my own. Feels awkward, feels weird. As you guys know, long-term listeners, that we usually have Matt here, as we said last week, if you had listened to the show, that he's not going to be around here this week. The Bellas segment changed him. It forced him to go across the world to escape it. But he's out sunning over the other side of the world. We hope he's having a great holiday. And if you guys miss him, be sure to leave a comment below. And he'll be back soon. The next couple of weeks, as you know, going to be a little bit up in the air as I take my holiday next week, but you're still getting podcasts, guys. We're still going to do our podcast while I'm over in the holiday, so you guys will still get your audio goodness that you want each week, and there's a lot of wrestling stuff going on from now on. But this week is a big week, and I will be sure to do my best without my capable wingman beside me. But regardless, we've got a lot of stuff to get through, and so this is a general overview of the show. If you haven't caught us before and you're new to the show, then we review every segment of Raw. We've also got a fail of the week, which I know you guys are absolutely loving. We've also got NXT Takeover this week, which I have watched, and it will be reviewed on this show. And we also got an interesting segment because a lot of the stuff I've been watching, especially to do with the last couple of Raws, you know, the last mid-monthers, as we like to call them here on the show, is it's becoming more of an issue to me with the show being 3 hours long. And I'm going to go through several reasons why 3 hours now is just not a good length for a show, and it's becoming too much to watch. And we're going to go into some more details. We're going to talk about that, and I might reference that more in the Raw review. And I'd like to thank you all guys for supporting the show before we get started as well. This week we had broken 100 subscribers. Thank you very, very much for supporting the show. We wouldn't be here without you guys, to be honest. So thank you all guys for carry on endorsing the show, supporting the show, sharing it to your friends, sharing it all over social media, sending us tweets, and you can follow our Twitter account at TalkWrestlePod, and you can ask us any questions there along those lines. So without further ado, we'll continue. We'll get on with the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy this very first and hopefully one of very rare occurrences, a solo podcast from myself. So let's get into some news before we begin the actual wrestling reviews here this week. And unfortunately, myself and Matt, we got to a stage in the podcast where we realised there was about 6 or 7 weeks constantly that we're either hearing of a wrestler dying or a wrestler getting released or losing his job, and neither of which we really want to hear about. It's not good news to hear about guys that we've enjoyed wrestling in the ring losing their job, or or even people losing their lives. I mean, unfortunately, because of professional wrestling, we tend to hear about a lot of these issues and a lot of these stories that break out more regularly than you would say, in other sports or entertainment. It's a shame. But another one has gone this week, and it is someone that a lot of people unfortunately may not know, and a guy who had a lot of potential, former WWE superstar Sean O'Haire. And a lot of you may be hearing that name and thinking, who's that guy? Well, he was around during about the time where the brand separation was in full effect. SmackDown itself was a much stronger brand, and when they had the likes of Hulk Hogan, exclusively on that show, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, they had a lot of star power on that show, and it was his own entity. You look at SmackDown now, and it's a shell. It's not even a show that we watch here on the podcast, because there just isn't nearly enough that actually happens on it. It's a dead show in that sense, in terms of storyline. If something important happens on SmackDown, they'll either reference it on Raw or redo it again on Raw. So back then it was a lot stronger. I mean, the guy was given a lot of push at the very beginning. He was paired with Rowdy Roddy Piper. And obviously Roddy Piper at that point, was nowhere near the star, of course, that he was back in those times. But still being paired up with someone, it's the equivalent of someone being paired up with like a Ric Flair now, or or a Sting. If even though I think that would be a bad idea, but being paired up with a legend, who's performed in that many WrestleManias, will only do good for him. And he was paired with Piper for a while, and he showed some great promise. He had a good look. He was half decent in the ring, but there came a point where the guy just wasn't getting there, or to the point that WWE just weren't letting him get to that point, giving him the real big push that he needed to get to that next level. And unfortunately, he just faded into obscurity and eventually just left the company. And with that came a lot of stories of him battling drink and drugs, which is, again, another unfortunate staple of professional wrestlers and just the wrestling industry as a whole. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole Nancy Grace stuff. That was stupid, all the stuff that she came out with back then. But we can't run away from the fact that drugs drink and drugs do lead to a lot of wrestler deaths, and unfortunately this claims another one. Now, the story is that coming out that apparently he committed suicide, maybe because of, I haven't heard that many stories of Sean O'Haire, honestly, since he left WWE, no less, and that's a very long time ago. We're talking about a decade ago that this guy was really involved with WWE. So it is a shame that, it's always a shame when you hear another WWE superstar passes away, and especially, due to these terms. We wish that, I just hope that his family, are okay and they can deal with the grief and everything along those lines. You've heard us say a lot of this stuff before on wrestler deaths, and it's not a great way to start the solo podcast, but wrestling news, we take the good with the bad. Going forward, we're going to talk about CM Punk's legal documents. We talked about this story last week where CM Punk had sent a lot of places had broken the story apparently about him starting legal proceedings. That lawsuit had been filed, and we said no, that hasn't happened. And to this date, no lawsuit has been filed, guys. Okay, so people calm down. Okay, a lot of this stuff legally will happen where you send a legal dossier to a company that you believe is wrong, and then if they don't carry or fall through for their promise, then a lawsuit will happen. Okay, what it looks like to me, CM Punk has sent a dossier stating that I don't believe that you have the right to sell my merchandise, and it seems that WWE have taken it calm, and they've taken all of his merchandise off of their online and the WWEshop.com. You can't find any of his stuff on there now, and while I haven't heard of any news of his stuff being completely removed from house shows, I haven't heard any stories of stuff being continually sold, and I'd be shocked if they were, if I'm honest. This long after he's left, you got to think now, he left after Royal Rumble. The night after Royal Rumble was the night that he went, remember? That's damn near 7 months ago, guys. Wow. When you think about that, 7 months ago, CM Punk's not been on the product. Can you really blame WWE for taking his merchandise off now anyway? Personally, as you guys know, my thoughts on this whole CM Punk situation, I think CM Punk was in the wrong. He was unprofessional. I can understand to a degree, and everyone's got to do what they've got to do, but if you sign a contract, you play out to that contract, and that's the way that I perceive that you should deal with the issue. And we've said before that myself and Matt, we worked in very managerial positions, so maybe we look at it different than other people. That may be the case. But still, there is no legal lawsuit happening, and you see a lot of these sites doing clickbaiting, saying CM Punk is suing WWE, CM Punk going to court with WWE. That's not even close to that happening yet. And WWE taking off the merchandise is actually a precursor to that not happening. So we'll continue to see how it goes from there. I don't believe this is the end of what we've seen of it so far, but as we said, we'll keep an eye on it there. And any further involvement during CM Punk and WWE is going to be interesting, regardless of what happens. Apologies, a drink for the working man, as Steve Austin likes to say on his podcast. So, a nod to Stone Cold. Warner Brothers Studios have apparently. Now, this is a news story that broke that could potentially be an explosion of news going forward, but yet again, it's another thing that hasn't fully fleshed out. The Warner Brothers Studios, you may know them as the big film company, and television and animation. All I can think is Animaniacs when I think of Warner Brothers, but that's just the kid in me showing out. They've looked into purchasing the WWE tape library, which is pretty interesting. It's a move that I can guarantee that almost no one saw coming. And apparently WWE haven't shown complete distaste for doing it, that it's on their mind, but nothing has happened yet. It's an early story, and when something more conclusive breaks, myself and Matt will go into much more detail in regards to where this could go from here, but at the moment it could be a moot point. So we'll leave it there now. Just know that that is a option that it looks like both companies are choosing to go down, but it's too early to tell. So there's no point talking about this stuff because it may not get anywhere. You know what I mean? We don't want to waste your time here. So there's the news for the week. A fairly slow news week, but we're leading into Night of Champions in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully a little bit more news will come up from there. But regardless, the big talking point around this week, funny enough, hasn't been around Raw. It's been about NXT Takeover 2 Fatal 4-Way, which seems like a real mouthful of a name. Just, we've said back before that why do they call it Takeover again? We had a rival Takeover and then Takeover again. It just seems a bit odd. And they didn't even name it Takeover 2, but still, regardless, they could have called it Redemption or or Avenge, or there's a whole list of these epic names they can do it, but they chose to go with Takeover Fatal 4-Way, which is a bit of a mouthful. But it's easily, this show, NXT, easily the best wrestling show that I've seen, bar SummerSlam, because I thought SummerSlam was also very, very good, but the best wrestling show that I've seen in a very long time. And you pair NXT TakeOver to the last 3 Raws that we've had, this week included, which was better, but the last 2, the 2 weeks before, which has just been filled with Bella segments, this just completely, it's like night and day. NXT TakeOver was a fantastic wrestling show, 2 hours long no less, so even more a advert for the 2-hour Raw format. So let's go through the matches here. I'm going to have a few of my my thoughts on some of the wrestlers. I don't watch NXT each week. Matt does. He catches it much more regularly than I do. But obviously with the network launching in UK and Ireland in October 1st, it's going to be a lot more easier for me to catch NXT. So you can imagine it's going to be a lot more in our minds. It's going to be much more easily accessible, and me and Matt are both getting the network, because we'd be a bit of a bad wrestling podcast if we did not look into this big thing that WWE's going into. So the first match of the night, Lucha Dragons against the Ascension, and this is for the NXT tag titles. The Ascension are the longest reigning tag team champions. They've held it for almost a year of the times that I've seen them. They look cool. They look awesome. In fact, I love the whole theme and their whole gimmick and the darkness that surrounds them. I'm big into that. But it has been a little bit like, if you've seen one Ascension match, more than likely you've seen a lot of them. And so, facing the likes of a Lucha team, there's a lot of stuff they could do here. And the match was good. It was a good opening match. And it spelled the end for the Ascension. The Lucha Dragons are the new NXT tag champions. And what this does, for my thoughts, is that this opens up the Ascension to be called up onto the main roster. There's an old sort of a call of right that used to happen with the Intercontinental belt, which just doesn't happen anymore. Those belts don't mean nearly as much as they used to. But back then, when you were to lose the IC belt and you're a good IC champion, more often than not, you're moving up. You're going to a further thing. So yeah, you might be getting a loss here, but it's actually moving you further up the list. That you're getting promoted. You look at the likes of Steve Austin as an Intercontinental Champion. Straight after that, started moving into more of the WWE Championship run. You look at Bret Hart as the Intercontinental Champion. And as soon as he lost that, he was then more actively involved in the WWE Championship. Now things don't work the same, but with this particular situation, I think the Ascension, they're not doing much on NXT. I think they've played out on NXT. I think it's fair enough. I think it does good for them. Some people, it's like almost like Sami Zayn. You don't want him moved up to the main roster because you think you might get ruined. We might not be able to see him perform these fantastic 20, 30-minute matches. But with the Ascension, there's not much that we're missing. I think that they're played out on NXT as far as what I can see. So it makes sense for them to lose. Give the belts to the Lucha Dragons, who can go forward. It gives them a little bit of momentum. Kalisto more than Sin Cara. And then the Ascension then can go up to the main roster and start beating teams and moving forward in that division. And it's a group that I think that WWE are missing right now. That dark tag team, which there isn't that slot in there. And it's not as if the Wyatts feel that slot. I don't think they do. I think that's something different. And good that it's different, but still. It was a good match. It was nowhere close to being the best of the night, but it was good and it was entertaining. Baron Corbin then beat CJ Parker. Well, Baron Corbin looks good. I mean, when I say beat CJ Parker, I mean just slammed him and won. And then people were chanting his name afterwards. The NXT crowd are so generous in comparison to other crowds. But while Baron Corbin beating CJ Parker sounds good and in such a quick time, CJ Parker is pretty much booked as like the Zack Ryder of NXT. So, yeah, we'll hold our breath and see what goes on there. Enzo Amore beats Sylvester Lefort. That's my best French. I'm not very good at French, so. And neither is Sylvester Lefort. Obviously, his French accent sometimes borders on the. I've been listening to Triple H's podcast with Chris Jericho and just replaying some of his French accents and stuff there. Maybe that's what put me off, but regardless. It's just a mix of it. I know, like it's fine. It's not too much of an issue. But anyway, it's a hair versus hair match. This match, in fact, I thought was pretty poor. It kind of showed everything that's good and bad about Enzo Amore, who I think can be a very big star. So don't get me wrong. I think the guy has got some talent. But I think his talent relies more on the mic than it does in the ring. And I think it showed a lot during this match. It wasn't that exciting. It was very slow. It was clunky. It didn't seem to pick up at any point. And that's for neither guy. I didn't think the four offered much in the match itself either. And then Enzo wins with basically a roll-up pin, pulling up the tights. I don't mind, faces eventually doing a few heel tactics if that's part of their gimmick, but that's how it ended anyway. So, as you'd expect here, Sylvester Lefort was due to have his hair cut, but he gets the hell out of Dodge and leaves his teammate Marcus Louis to get his hair cut. When I say cut, put with this this foam that basically is like foam that just tears your hair straight off. So, yeah, I thought this, like I said, this match highlighted everything that's good and bad about Enzo Amore. I think Enzo Amore is probably one of the best guys they have in their entire talent pool at doing a very convincing, lifelike to his character promo. Like, it's 100% him. And he's very good, very entertaining when he's got the mic in his hands, and when he's got Big Cass beside him as well. I think the back and forth between them is very fluid. I do like that. But the ring work, I'm not exactly enthralled by it. But then again, we've had John Cena, as the main guy of the company, and he isn't exactly the best ring worker, and that's 10 years of him working with some of the best wrestlers in the world. So, there you go. You don't have to be that good in the ring to be a massive superstar in WWE. That's why I say that all Enzo has to be is a decent, mediocre wrestler, but be fantastic on the mic. And he's going to have more chance than someone that's on the flip side that's brilliant in the ring, but mediocre on the mic. That's the way it goes. You have to be a good talker in WWE because you don't get much time in the ring. That's the way it goes. But still, I still think that Enzo Amore is hugely entertaining. And it wasn't as if it was a waste of my time. The match just wasn't. When you stack up this match to the likes of the main event, there's just no competition, really. Kenta made his debut. And this had William Regal bringing him out. I was actually surprised. I don't know. I've seen Kenta's ring work, but I haven't seen how good he is with his English. He's much further along than I would expect him to be. A lot of people are making reference that his English does seem very broken. He doesn't seem very confident with it. I think he was a lot better than I expected. I think his English was actually fine. You can say that, and the more he's there, and the more he's working with a very American very English speaking, roster that he's going to be with NXT, he's going to pick up that stuff really quickly, guys. And he's living in the country as well, and he strikes me as a guy that wants to work really hard, and he probably knows as well as good as you and me does that. He's seen all these people come out here who don't know the language, like the original Sin Cara, that just hasn't worked. And part of that is the language barrier. And that's not me being racist. That's just general. How are you supposed to work with someone that can't understand what you're saying? It makes it harder for you to work in the ring and do your work in the ring when that's actually a universal language in the style. You know what I mean? So he announces that he's changing his name to Hideo Itami. Don't think it's as good as the Kenta name. Just going to say that now. But it's also not completely horrible. He says that it's to one of his idols, one of his heroes that he's doing it to. I liked his entrance music. I liked his entrance. His Titantron. The graphics and everything. Thought it was fine. And the Ascension come out during this. Essentially demanding another tag match. That's why I think they're probably going to end up going. And they have a scuffle with Kenta. Kenta gets the better of them. Oh, sorry, Hideo Itami. We're going to have to get used to calling him that. And we will get used to calling that. We will call him Hideo Itami. Because that's how his character's going forward. There's no point dwelling on the fact that he used to be Kenta. You're going to eventually look to this guy's future. Not what he's done before. Look forward to what he can do in the future as Hideo Itami. That's the way that you need to look at it. If you're going to think, oh, they've changed his name, he's not nearly going to be as good as Kenta was. What he's done before. Then you're already putting yourself in the wrong mindset. This guy's going to do brilliant work if WWE let him do it. So there we are. I think it's going to be great. He will be in action on NXT next week, and I thought it was very good that WWE actually referenced that, because it's going to make more people wanting to watch NXT after the special, which is good. They want to get people into NXT because it's a brilliant show. Just to show all the good things about wrestling at the moment. Bull Dempsey beat Mojo Rawley within a few minutes, and when I mean a few minutes, very, very quickly. Mojo never got off the beat here, and I haven't seen nearly enough of either guy to form a solid opinion. The only thing I say about Mojo Rawley, there doesn't seem much more to him now than there was the last time I saw him on an NXT special. So that's the only thing I can say. The only thing about Bull Dempsey is, like I said, I haven't seen enough of the guy. Can't formulate much of an opinion on him yet, but we'll see how it goes forward. For what I saw here, it was okay, but the match itself was poor. Charlotte's then against Bayley. As soon as Bayley came out, I was watching NXT in the middle of the day, which I rarely watch, wrestling shows in the middle of the day. But to get it for the podcast, I rushed all this in to get it for you guys to for the show. So my daughter was watching this with me, and as soon as Bayley came out, her eyes lit up. I mean, her eyes lit up. I think she has a new hero. Come on, a female wrestler that comes out with awesome stars, flashing music, with inflatable arm tube men who loves to hug people. They say John Cena is a beacon for little boys, to want to be like him. Fucking hell, Bayley is like the beacon for little girls to want to, get behind this girl. And my daughter was instantly, even before I asked her, who do you want to win the match, she was like, I want her to win that match. Which is a shame, because she lost the match to Charlotte. But still, in that case, Bayley's got a lot of appeal. She could appeal to a demographic not yet tailored to by WWE. So, there you are. That's it. I think there's a big future for Bayley. I think she's very, very good in the ring. She had a fantastic match here with Charlotte. And Charlotte, to her credit, when she first came in and what the matches I saw of her, she was so green. And she looks so comfortable. But everything that she does in there, and she's incredibly athletic. To the point of the fact that she can probably do a lot of stuff in that ring that a lot of their current divas, no matter how good they are at wrestling, I'm talking about the AJ Lees and Paiges, she could probably do some stuff in the ring that they can't do because of what I'm guessing is a gymnastics background. She can go, guys. I mean, it's in her blood. You don't get to be the child of Ric Flair, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, in ring technicians, and not pick up a few things. That's the way it is. And she's come a long way. I think she is very, very good. And she has this air about her of dominance. I think it has to do with her height and the fact the way she carries herself like a champion. Which is a very important thing. So, yeah, this was a great match. It showed a bit of Bayley where she just wouldn't give up. That she just kept taking hits at the end of the match, and it ended up taking the natural selection, which I much prefer to being called Bow Down to the Queen. I thought that was a much better homage to Charlotte's character. But, you know what? I'll take it. It's okay. It's not huge. After the match, Sasha Banks and comes out to attack Bayley, but then Charlotte makes the save, which was a bit shocking. And then it almost looked like Charlotte was having like a mini face thing where she was protecting Bayley, even telling Sasha on the Fallout show, which was actually put up as well, telling Sasha not to tell Bayley to shut up and stuff. So basically defending her, you know. Which is fine. I like this idea of Charlotte being a character that doesn't give you any respect until you've had a kick-ass match with her. And you've shown her what you can do. That's fine. That's okay. I've got no problem with that. And then her being this arrogant champion afterwards because she thinks she's good, and she is. I think that's fine. And that's, when you count that now, over the 3 NXT specials, they are 3 for 3 in fantastic women's matches on NXT specials. And you look at this, a 10-minute long match, which is actually the shortest one that they've had of the 3, but they're all still excellent. And more so than this is the fact that these are 2 stars that are yet to come up to the main roster. So you've got Bayley and Charlotte. They're waiting to get up into the main roster. If this is what they can do, I'm very excited. But it all goes down to that same question. We've seen Paige and Emma be brought up, and very little done, especially with Emma. But in terms of in-ring ability, have we seen Paige have a match like she had on NXT against Emma yet on the main roster, and she's been on there for a long time? No, it hasn't got to that point yet. So that's the big question. I think that's a question for another time. But still, match was phenomenal, and they made it feel like a main event with the presentation of the show. So kudos to NXT. It was very well done. So this leads us into the main event of the night. This main event, it was probably the best advertisement anyone could have made for why anyone should want to get involved and watch NXT on a regular basis. It was phenomenal. Epic. And everything you could possibly want in a professional wrestling match. I mean, it seems weird to say a professional wrestling match, not an event, like WWE likes to call it, or it's too used to these Adam Rose 5-second matches and stuff like this, when we're seeing this absolute epic saga of a match unfold in front of us. The Fatal 4-Way with Sami Zayn, Tyler Breeze, Tyson Kidd, and the champion Adrian Neville. Not a single one of these guys had a moment where you didn't think he might win the belt. That they suspended our belief enough to think anyone could win this. There was a moment where it looked like Tyson Kidd was going to win. There was a moment plenty moments where Sami Zayn thought he was going to win. There was a great moment in a match where Tyler Breeze decided that he was going to go ape shit and just attack everyone. It looked like he was going to get the win. And the ending was good, and it wasn't frustrating at the same time, even though it was a very fine line that it could be. So essentially, the ending of the match is that Sami Zayn's got it won, and he's gone through the ringer in this match. He's been the guy who's taken arguably the most punishment in the match, and kicked out of the most power moves, the most, moves that you think he would be down and out for. So he's been through the ringer. Looks like he's just about to pin Tyson Kidd, but then Adrian Neville doesn't stop the pin, but he pulls out the referee, which, as the commentators are very quick to state, it's not actually against the rules because it's a no DQ match. You can do that. But obviously it's violating the sportsman, the spirit of wrestling, shall we say. So it brings up this ambiguity of, did Adrian Neville cheat? And maybe this is going to be going forward, maybe the thing that changes his character a little bit going forward. It gives him a bit of drive going after NXT. The rivalry maybe between Sami Zayn and Adrian Neville, you didn't, you screwed me, essentially. You didn't act the way that you should, and so it does a level of ambiguity, but I like that anyway. And then obviously the match ends with Adrian Neville using his red arrow, which is spectacular. My wife was almost dumbfounded by how that move looks, and the majority of the fans on Raw this week, because NXT was on Raw, were dumbfounded just how awesome that move looks, and that's good. Good stuff. So all in all, NXT Takeover was a fantastic way to spend 2 hours watching a wrestling show, and all in all, that's pretty much all that we want from Raw, really. But we got it from NXT here, and it was the best show of the week. It's been the best show in a very long time. These NXT specials are something to be very excited about, no matter what you're going forward there. So a brilliant show, all in all. and I'd heavily recommend it. And in fact, if someone were to ask me the question to watch Raw or NXT, it would be NXT, hands down. So there we are. And the thing is with NXT is that I think NXT is good. Like, a lot of people won't maybe asking this question. Well, if NXT is so good, then why are they there and the guys on the main roster are on the main roster? Why don't they do a massive switch? And obviously that's completely out of question. That would never happen. But it does light a fire under the main roster's ass to have a show this good by the developmental, and yet they may have a match on a pay-per-view that's not nearly as good. And sometimes it's not even the talent's fault. It will be the creative. Whoever does the creative for NXT and builds the whole show around it does a very, very good job. But then when you look at it then at the 3-hour Raws, it's something completely different. And like I said, we'll go into that with the Raw review. But before our Raw review, we've got our segment that you guys just love. And we love it too. And this week I tried to pick a fail of the week that Matt wouldn't mind missing, but at the same time is still entertaining. And I couldn't find one because I know all the fail of the weeks he's going to love anyway. But regardless, we've got one here for you this week. And yes, we have delved back into the WCW vault. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. And it's hard to think that I loved this company, and a lot of people did during its heyday, when everything was quite exciting. But yeah, this goes into the Vince Russo WCW that we're talking about here. So yes, talking about the gift that keeps on giving, especially to this segment, no less. But there was a storyline made during a lot of Russo's time, a lot of wacky storylines. A lot of these storylines that made no sense. Russo suddenly became a fan of turning the whole thing on its head and shaking the foundations and basically breaking the fourth wall and basically telling everyone that wrestling's fake. Essentially saying that on his own show. And the angle essentially goes where Goldberg was supposed to take a power bomb. I can't remember who it was from. I think it was from Scott Steiner or Kevin Nash or something along those lines. Okay, but then he just stops and walks out of the ring. Vince Russo then comes out and starts telling him, "You go and take that powerbomb. You follow what we told you to do." And then Goldberg refuses to do it. And then you can find promos regarding this whole segment of Goldberg refused to follow the script. So it's, as you can imagine, right? You may be thinking, well, in modern day, I mean, everyone knows wrestling's choreographed, that it's planned, predetermined. That it follows storylines. Everyone knows that by now. But a lot of fans, including myself, would like to, at times, suspend our disbelief, and the show sometimes lets us do that. Like we're watching, anything different from. I hate hearing this thing where saying, "Oh, wrestling's fake" and everything. Okay, so is your Breaking Bad show, but we can enjoy wrestling, and so can you. We can also enjoy this. We know it's not real. Doesn't stop us from enjoying it. A lot of people don't tend to understand that. Non-wrestling fans, people here that listen to this podcast, I guarantee you, we've all heard it as wrestling fans. I'm going off a tangent here, but what the hell? But we've always heard as wrestling fans, wrestling's fake. Why do you enjoy it? Obviously, it's not real. But we don't believe that Transformers came down from another planet and stopped other Megatron from destroying the world. We don't believe that a man dressed as a bat came and saved a fictional city full of crime from a guy who thought that he was a clown. We don't genuinely believe that happened, but we can enjoy it regardless. It's a story. This is my little 2 cents on that. But anyway. But imagine then, in those shows, if Walter White from Breaking Bad turned around and said, "This isn't actually happening." It would completely take you out of the immersion of it. And it wasn't a good angle. Dismissing kayfabe is never a good idea, just going forward with this. And it caused way more problems than it did anything good. And the storyline went forward that they kept telling Goldberg to go out there and take the powerbomb because it was in the script, and Goldberg refused to follow the script, and there was these footage of Russo and Goldberg having arguments about him not doing what he's told to do. So they basically accepted on WCW that wrestling was fake. They was predetermined. They accept that in storyline, no less. The problem is that the rest of the matches going around, it was still not relative, and they didn't make it any reference towards this. So it immediately then made all the other matches on the show pointless. You know, like it was like, okay, we're just going to accept that wrestling is fake, make it part of a storyline, but we're going to do all these other matches that don't make any reference to this. They didn't do on this massive tirade going, okay, we're going to make wrestling real fights, and even though they're not, but you know what I mean. There's something at the very least that they could stop this train wreck with. They just never did, and the entire thing just played out, and it was awful television, and it was embarrassing. And talking there about non-wrestling fans, talking to wrestling fans about, oh, your show's fake and stuff like this. There are some moments in wrestling where I rather not use it as an example of why we like wrestling, and this is one of them. And there was another one on Raw actually this week. So yeah, it's very awkward. The entire segment was awkward. It did way more damage, and it could have in turn done way more damage to the industry as a whole. I mean, you look back in the days where, you know, in what they call the golden age of wrestling, you know, the 50s to the 80s, you know, these guys not only lived the kayfabe in the ring, they lived it outside. You couldn't ride in the same car as someone that you were feuding with because it was the story. It was exactly who they were. They went into great lengths into making these things believable, not only in the ring but outside of it. Can you imagine some of these guys? They would roll out of their grave if they thought it was made into a storyline that wrestling wasn't real. You know what I mean? Can you imagine? And so yeah, it's embarrassing stuff, and it's not great stuff to, as like I said, as a wrestling fan, to show to other people and say this is why I enjoy professional wrestling. So it's a massive fail. As you know, WCW at that point was beyond help. It was just basically letting out its dying breaths, and this is just one of them, unfortunately. So massive fail of the week. You can search up on YouTube now. I couldn't find footage of the actual thing happening, but I could find footage of the promo that they made afterwards, and it will make you shake your head and wonder why they ever thought of going down this route. And this is the reason why Vince Russo gets a lot of shit that he does, because of stuff like this. You know? Moving forward anyway from our fail of the week to our meat and bones of the podcast, our Raw review. And if you're new to the podcast, well, welcome along, obviously. And we review every segment of Raw. So every segment of Raw, even though it's very short, we'll at least make some sort of reference to it. It's our calling card to the podcast community. Something that we do that as far as we know, no one else does. So there we go. That's what we do here. Last week we slammed Raw for a second week in a row, and as you guys may know, we don't like talking about negatively about Raw. Even though we have to, and when it's a bad Raw, we'll tell you it's a bad Raw, but we don't enjoy it. This Raw was better, but not great. But it did have moments where I would want to rewatch it for said moments, and in which case, that's pretty much a plus for WWE. But you also get the feel that, considering they were spouting that this was a season premiere, that they kind of, in their minds, went all out. And if this is what them going all out, then I wasn't impressed. But we'll take it for what it is. It's a mid-monther Raw. It's not the Raw leading into a pay-per-view. It's still a mid-monther, and it was okay. It was good in some places, horrific in some places, but good in some places. So it was from Baltimore. Now, people may remember one of the very first podcasts that we did was actually the one where Jake the Snake came back. It was the old school Raw, and we were heavily critical of the Baltimore crowd, saying that they gave the guy literally no pop whatsoever. And we said, "Is this usually what fans get in Baltimore?" Since then, they've shown us that maybe it was just a bad crowd that night, because all the shows been done in Baltimore, the crowds have been fairly okay. You know, decent if not good. You know what I mean? So, and this crowd were okay. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make any qualms. So the whole Baltimore not having a good crowd thing, on this podcast at the very least, that's dispelled. They showed me more often than not. They're okay. So well done, Baltimore. You've redeemed yourself in our eyes anyway. So 2 weeks away now from Night of Champions. Well, technically it's a week away as you'll be listening to this at the weekend. They remind us obviously of the stuff that's going to happen on the show. They did a recap, which they haven't done a lot of these shows, but they're doing it obviously because it's the season premiere, of the steel cage match between Wyatt and Chris Jericho, and the Jerry Springer segment, which ironically are the two segments that were very, very good and very, very bad. So yeah, they reminded us of those two things. And also with the season premiere, I don't get this because I'm over in England, right? I'm guessing, is it like the full season premiere over there, that this is when you get a lot more different shows coming up, and this is the reason why they called it a season premiere? I didn't understand it here in England, so maybe someone can leave a comment below and let us know. But I don't know. The main thing I'm thinking of is that obviously with autumn coming up, and as you guys say over in America, the majority of our fans are American. You say it's the fall. I'm guessing that is what you're getting at. But if it's not, then feel free to correct me. I was a little bit lost, but lost in translation, some would say, from the other side of the pond. So, the start of the match, I wonder how many listeners of the show watched the fact that the match started with a cage match and thought, Tony's going to like this, the fact that the show started with a match. And you'd be right, okay? Now, while I still think, you guys are going to think I can't be happy regardless. And I am happy with this match before I get started. But while I think matches should start Raws, a cage match should never start a Raw, I'm a firm believer that. If you are going to have a cage match on a Raw, it should be the main event. A cage match shouldn't be used willy-nilly, and on those lines. Just, okay, we'll just have a cage match here on the show. It should be a big attraction. Now, obviously, they've kind of outdone themselves the fact that the cage now is essentially a small Hell in a Cell, but I still like cage matches. I like the premise of them. But it does seem a little bit like here was just throwing it out. But I can accept it now because I would much... I can either go two sides of the fence. I go, oh, they had a cage match and it's just diluting it, and it's horrible having it here. Or I can moan about the fact that, or I have to be a hypocrite and say, I don't like it, even though it was another match starting Raw. You know what? I liked it. It was fine, and because it was the season premiere, fair enough. Start your show off strong. So this is okay for me, and I want kick-ass matches to open shows, and this was okay. It was good. So, while I said the match was good, it was definitely better than Wyatt's match with Cena in a cage, because the Wyatts weren't as involved. It was more of a contest between two guys. But there was a huge spot here where Jericho was looking like he was going to climb out the cage. The Wyatts do stop him. So he essentially goes, well, I can't jump out there. I can't go down, because what's going on here. So, fuck it, I'll jump off the cage onto Wyatt, who's in the middle of the ring. Awesome segment. He did land really awkwardly in it. I'm guessing that was part of it. While he landed awkwardly, he also looked like he landed safe. And you may be thinking, you're scratching your head and thinking, what are you talking about? No, the way that he landed the move looks like he intentionally made it look as if he was going to injure his knee, and that was a big part of the storyline going forward. So I still think it was safe. I think that part was planned. But it did look, it looked like an awkward landing. So in that sense, if that's what they were going for, the Jericho aced it pretty well. It's still nowhere near as bad as Cody Rhodes landing less than 12 months ago when they were going against the New Age Outlaws. That was horrific. Ugh, we were heavily critical of Road Dogg back then, and we scratch our heads, myself and Matt scratch our heads wondering why people can defend him for that. Oh, why wouldn't you catch someone? Why would you catch someone jumping off the top of the cage? Because it was a pre-planned fucking spot. If you weren't comfortable with it, don't back out as the guy's in midair. And that spot there with Cody Rhodes still sends a shiver down my spine because it looks horrible. It looks much more horrible than this one did. So Wyatt gets the win. He essentially batters Jericho as they're both crawling to get out of the ring, and basically rolls over him. And I would like to say this looks like it ends their rivalry, but Jericho still wrestled on SmackDown, and it makes sense for him to have his final match on a pay-per-view, even though that might not be the case. He has gone before, on a mid-month show, no less. So I don't know where this goes from here, but I don't see any point after them having a cage match. Where do you go from here? And some people may say Hell in the Cell, but I'd much rather see a Rollins-Ambrose blood feud in the middle of Hell in the Cell rather than a Jericho-Wyatt one. And to me, I think the Jericho-Wyatt stuff has now gone on too long. So where they go from here is a bit odd. Maybe they don't have plans for either Wyatt or Jericho for Night of Champions, so they're giving them a big match now, and then they just won't feature on the pay-per-view, which is a bit of a misstep. But the win does something for Wyatt. I don't think it undoes the damage that Cena did to him, a couple of weeks ago. But it's still a cage match victory against Chris Jericho, even though he still had to use his Wyatt family to get the win. But a heel is a heel. But it's still a bad year for Wyatt. This isn't going to change my mind. Wyatt's had a horrendous year, and let's just hope this is the catalyst for something for the guy. Something for him to continue on. The Authority then are backstage. Orton says that he's going to do something to Reigns that'll make Rollins curb stomping Ambrose into concrete looked like a Sunday dinner or something along those lines. He said something very PG, along those lines. So yeah, he says that he's going to do something really horrendous to the guy. So I'm automatically thinking punt. That's just my thinking, but that wasn't due to happen. In fact, this foreboding of him doing horrible stuff to Reigns really didn't go that far. So a bit of a useless segment here to build up for something that never really paid off, regardless. But we'll talk about that later. Ziggler is out with a mic in his hand. This is a rare occurrence. If you remember, Ziggler had a interview that I watched, this is years ago now, where he said for the first 18 months of his career, he never had a mic in his hands on a televised show. For 18 months, that's a long time. So him being out with a mic doesn't happen too often. More often than not, he will be good in this segment, but the segment will be bad. And I'm talking about the last time he was in the ring. He was involved with a really awkward segment involving Hugh Jackman and Damien Sandow dressed as a really bad Magneto. So Ziggler himself can be entertaining, but he always seems to be stuck in these promos that are never going to get there. They're never going to do much for the guy. And this was another one, unfortunately. This wasn't a really heated promo about him saying how he's going to beat up The Miz. Nothing along those lines. Nothing like that. He makes a reference to the massive celebrity photo hack leak. If you haven't already heard, you've been under a rock the last 2 weeks. The likes of, I think the big name is Jennifer Lawrence. These photos being leaked off their iCloud. In fact, a few former divas and TNA divas have had their photos leaked of what I've heard. I can't say for sure, and these things could be fake for all we know. I haven't gone out looking for them, but still, it was a big news story about these things. And the guy, by the way, who got those pictures just sounds creepy. Apparently calls himself a collector. Ugh. Doesn't that make you sound as if there's some guy in front of a laptop in a dark room filled with these pictures that he's stolen from the internet? That sounds pretty sordid to me. I say that now, if this show ever gets big, he's going to be pictures of me wearing a thong somewhere, even though I've never done that. But who knows? And I don't even use iCloud, so there we go. Can you imagine that? LTW photos leaked. It's just me eating my dinner or something along those lines. It wouldn't be that exciting, Or it would just be me rehearsing the show. Nothing really leaked or anything along those lines. Quite funny anyway. But Ziggler says that he has photo leaks of The Miz and wants to share this. And before this begins, I thanked God for the very first time that we're in a PG era. I do not want to see bare naked pictures of The Miz. Are you real? Come on. You guys don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. So he's showing pictures of The Miz shaving his chest and then laughing at that, as if a lot of modern day wrestlers don't do exactly the same thing. Even maybe Ziggler does himself, I don't know, but I know that a lot of as soon as you get into the wrestling industry, suddenly all the hair goes off your chest and your armpits for nothing. You know what I mean? I thought that was quite funny. For someone that's been in locker rooms with wrestlers doing that stuff, you know what I mean? It's just silly. Miz comes out and shows him not to show the final picture, which is The Miz getting his ass sprayed, with tan, by Damien Sandow. Damien Sandow looks like he's enjoying it way too much. For Ziggler showing us these pictures, the guy's obviously turned heel. I'm joking, of course, he's not turned heel, but seriously, come on, dude, come on! No one wants to see that. No one wants to, come on, that's just wrong. The segment was bad. It didn't get anywhere. Eventually, Damien Mizdow came into the ring and got beaten up by Ziggler. Then it looked like things were getting a little bit interesting when Ziggler started showing some intensity, started telling Miz to get into the ring, I'll fight you. That was the only part of this segment that I could really get into. The whole thing behold it, why would we want to see Miz's leaked pictures? Keep them there. There's some things that we're better off not seeing. Okay? So there we are. So moving on from that, which was pretty bad, if I'm honest, the segment. We move on to Natalya and Rosa Mendes against AJ Lee and Paige. Now, we said that last week there was a 6 Diva tag match that had names littered of all the people we don't want to see. Now, doesn't Rosa Mendes seem like the odd one out in this whole group? That you've got Natalya, who can definitely go, AJ Lee and Paige, who can definitely go, and you've got Rosa Mendes in the mix. She seems like a little bit, a duck out of water. She just doesn't seem to mix, in this whole group. But regardless, and I heard for the very first time, and it was so. I want to know if these girls in the front row had listened to the podcast before, if they were just genuinely intelligent. They chanted AJ Lee instead of CM Punk. It was refreshing. Thank God someone was chanting AJ Lee instead of CM Punk. We've been asking for that on the podcast for weeks. Since CM Punk left and AJ Lee came back, and since all these chants started going up, stop chanting CM Punk. Chant AJ Lee. Do that. That'll do them, the pair, much more good. And these it was only a small chant, probably with a handful of women in the first couple of rows chanting AJ Lee. But you know what? I appreciate it, because we've been saying that on the show. And if you go to a show, guys, and AJ Lee's there, chant her name in reference of us, because it just makes sense. The match is not particularly great. It's very quick, as you would imagine. In fact, as soon as AJ's tagged in, after a little bit of wrestling, of which Rosa's taking most of the damage, she literally just puts Rosa in a very slow Black Widow submission hold, like just to make sure that it's synced in on someone that maybe doesn't know how to hold this in properly. And she makes Rosa tap out pretty much immediately following that. And then I'm getting proved week after week after week. Matt made a reference on the podcast stating that this may be going into a route that that Trish and Mickey had, where it started getting a little bit lesbonic between the pair and their rivalry. This has definitely gone that place, especially when the two are kissing the belt seductively while looking at each other, in the middle of the ring. But, even with that, while it's obviously doing something for someone out there, I imagine it is, there's like fan art being sprung up of these two girls in compromising positions, and we'll leave it at that before we move into a shameless pay-per-view plot. But a lot of this stuff are then going backwards and forwards, showing this sort of unease with each other and sort of casually flirting, but not really against each other. It's getting a little bit old, A lot of rivalries when it comes to their third match. Third match in a 3-month-long program, they're starting to get really stale, and we're getting to that point now with AJ Lee and Paige. And you may say, oh, well, now the Bella's involved, that doesn't make it any better. Trust me. I'd much rather still have an AJ Lee and Paige solo one-on-one match than having the Bellas involved. Let's just say that, but still. So then, backstage, Jericho is having his knee looked at, tweaked it in that match. Like I said, he sold it like a champ. So he's doing well there. And then Randy Orton decides to come back and just attack him for his statements last week, stating, oh, did I get everything handed to me this time? As he's battering Jericho, throwing him all over the place. Jericho selling the knee injury like an absolute boss throughout this entire beatdown. I would say it's a bit random, but they actually made, at least Randy Orton made some reference to the stuff that Jericho said last week. So you have to give it some props there. At least has some continuity, which you would expect that a show like Raw should have, but more often than not we don't. So we have to praise it there when it's there. And while I initially made the note here, it looks as if Jericho is being put out of the picture. Now it looks like he's going to be involved in more matches going forward. He was involved in a match on SmackDown, so probably not. We'll see where it goes from here. It may lead to like a group tag match at Night of Champions with Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, maybe even Dean Ambrose making a return against all members of the Authority. Puts them in some sort of match, because I can't imagine them not being involved in a match. That's probably the match they're going with, and I'm fine with that. We'll see how it goes from there. So then we are brought a Paul Heyman promo. A very lengthy promo, this, and one that was very, very good. Last week we slammed Heyman for the first time in ages. Maybe not his fault. He was given an inordinate, a stupid amount of time to make his statement. So it felt rushed because it was rushed, and because he didn't have enough time to really do a proper promo. It wasn't good. And I think that's the first time we've ever said anything negative about Paul Heyman on this show. But hey, when it's warranted, it's warranted. And like I said, regardless of not whether it's his fault, we can only review of what's there in front of us on the screen. So he wants to issue a warning to the face of Cena, This brings out Cena, which Heyman didn't seem to, Come on, you say Cena's name too many times. He's like Roman Reigns. You say his name too many times, he's just going to come out. Heyman says that he's dropping the warning now, and he's going to tell Cena how to beat Brock Lesnar at Night of Champions. He's going to tell him how to beat the Beast Incarnate. It's very nice of him. Cena then goes forward and says that Taken got beaten by Lesnar, and he's been out for 6 months. Cena was beaten by Lesnar, and he's come back straight away. So equally, literally in one sentence, he basically said that the Undertaker's a bit of a puss and couldn't take a beating from Brock Lesnar. And at the same time, kind of reminded everyone the reason why it was a little bit frustrating him coming back so early and not selling any of the injuries that he got from Brock at SummerSlam, considering the beating that he got from Brock at SummerSlam, and how well that was delivered. The fact that Cena just comes back and he's not even. You look at Dean Ambrose. How many months was Dean Ambrose selling the shoulder injury that he had after the Shield had broken up? And it's only recently now that as soon as he stopped selling it, then he got his head trampled into concrete. But he was selling that thing. He was selling that injury for ages. Cena can't sell a beating for Brock Lesnar for a week. No. That's why a lot of people dislike him. He's unrealistic at times. And a lot of that is the way that he's booked. You can imagine Vince McMahon doesn't want him coming out looking like a battered soldier. That's the way they want it to go. In fact, a lot of the words on the reason why Cena's been booked the way the last 3 weeks has been because of Vince McMahon. So, aged thinking, possibly. A lot of the same stuff would have gone with Hulk Hogan back in the day, and people ate it up. But things aren't the same now as they were 20 years ago. So, there we go. So, Heyman hits back and says that Lesnar only hears 3 people in the ring, while Cena hears everyone calling his name. Lesnar only listens to 3 people: the referee, Heyman himself, and the suffering of those in the ring with him. Great line, awesome. Heyman had a few very hidden but very good lines in this. He says that Cena needs to tap into the temptation and tell the Cenas to shut up. They're essentially teasing the heel turn again, except Heyman's the one that's teasing it now. And for a few times it looks like Cena's going to go out and he's going to tell them to shut up finally. He's going to turn heel, but you and me know. Come on. You and me. Come on, guys. Come in close to me. Come in close to me. For the people that don't know, for the people that do know what I'm about to say, you're fine. But the people that don't know, come in close. Cena is never, ever going to be heel. I'm sorry to break it to you. That's the way it is. In fact, he kind of reminded everyone the reasons why WWE won't make him heel. It's for all the Make-A-Wish stuff. It's for all the kids buying his merchandise. It's for him being the face of the brand going forward. And yes, a lot of people point to the fact that Hogan, he turned heel at WCW, even though he was a huge face at that time. Even he was, he was cautious about taking the heel turn, and rightly so. Do I think that Cena becoming a heel would be massive and it would give such, it would be huge and all these people get some surge of drive into the products as a whole? Yes, I do. I do think it would be amazing if he turned heel. But can I understand also the reasons why WWE don't do it and understand that they will never do it? Yes, I can as well. So you have to look at both sides. So yeah, they're teasing the heel turn, but as we said, it's never going to happen. You guys know that by now anyway. He says to Cena that Cena doesn't have to sell his soul to the devil to turn heel because the devil already sold his soul to Heyman. Fantastic line. I wish that he had saved it for a moment where he wasn't running through so much stuff, but still brilliant stuff. So as we said, the teasing here goes on a little bit too long, but then Cena does. Then he pulls out, and as we said, he kind of reminds us of all the reasons why the company won't turn him heel, even though he does it in his own way. But he does it in such a passionate and very constructed, strong way that it was a good promo. And you guys may be shocked, me saying Cena and good promo. Cena's capable of doing it, just not when he recycles his usual promo week in, week out. He is capable of doing a great promo. This was a good promo. It was very, very good. Especially the way that he got over all these things. And it almost, some of the best stuff that you can do as a promo comes from things that you genuinely believe. And I genuinely believe he believes in a lot of things that he said. In fact, the story he was telling about, the soldier giving him his Purple Heart stuff, I'm inclined to agree that probably happened. In fact, I'm pretty sure it would have, because it seemed genuine. It came from the heart. Plus, it would be a bit odd if it came out that he made it up. It would be very detrimental to his character. So I can imagine a lot of this stuff. And, you know, father's going to him and saying, well, while I don't like you, my kid does. Which, ironically, is what Heyman said to him. He says, my kid hates Cena and it annoys me to no end. It pisses him off. So, yeah, it was a good promo. And it was enjoyable. The only thing is that the promo itself was enjoyable, but did I think it did anything for the Lesnar-Cena match? No. It didn't. That was the issue. If you're trying to sell the rematch between these guys, I don't think it did that. I don't think the promo put any more chips into that rematch at Night of Champions. So if you're looking at that, then it could be a bit of a fail by these guys. But it was a good promo nonetheless, and I did enjoy it. I did enjoy watching it, and ideally, considering the last couple of Raws, then we'll take that. But they're going to keep doing this Cena heel tease card every now and then. But come on, anyone out there that firmly believes that Cena will one day turn heel, get with the program. It's not going to happen. If it would have happened, it would have happened by now. So this leads into Cena, basically the end of the promo. Cena says that he'll fight Heyman next week if Brock Lesnar is around. So there we are. That's where it's going to go. And Brock will be on Raw next week, so we can imagine a stare down, possibly even a scrap between the two, leading into Night of Champions. Sheamus then against Seth Rollins. This match is barely a minute old before we hear that horrible, horrible entrance music of Cesaro. And every time I hear his entrance music, I shake my head. And they've tweaked it now so it has an ambulance siren instead, and it just does nothing for it. It's basically fixing something that's bad with something that's equally as bad. It does nothing for it. There was a point, actually, in this match where it looked like Sheamus was going to be distracted by Cesaro, and he was going to take the most ultimate, devastating finishing move of all time, the schoolboy roll-up pin, and I was generally shocked that wasn't the finish of the match. Sheamus kicked out! Wow. Don't hear many of that going nowadays. So Rollins gets the win afterwards, regardless, with another distraction, with the peace of mind, or the curb. I think they're just calling it the curb stomp now. But it's not nearly long enough to be really considered a match that you would really want to go out of your way and see. It was okay. And that's the problem with it, though. It's kind of frustrating because everything before the end of the match was very clean and crisp, very tidy, good slams. Seemed like it'd be going a nice pace, but then they decided they didn't want to do the distraction finish. So, while I understand, I don't want either of these guys to be taking a loss, Rollins or Sheamus, leading into it. So they have to do the distraction really to have any finish that kind of makes sense. It still was a bit of a shame that we didn't get more out of a match with these guys, because you expect that Sheamus and Rollins could probably do quite well together. So afterwards, anyway, Cesaro comes in, hits the neutralizer on Sheamus, and poses with the belt. The usual cookie cutter, I'm going to attack you, pose with the belt because I'm going to take it away from yourself. We've seen it hundreds of times before. But you know what? It's a match I can get into. Sheamus against Cesaro is going to be really physical, and it's got a match that could be a show stealer. Every pay-per-view, we always reference matches that could be a show stealing match. Sheamus against Cesaro. I'm getting my words named. Too many S's and C's in that whole sentence. Sheamus against Cesaro could be a show stealer. So that is a tongue twister. Sheamus and Cesaro could be a show stealer. Say that 10 times, guys, and tell me if you don't get at least a little bit tongue tied. That is awkward. But yes, it should be an interesting and physical match. Hopefully they get time. Rusev and Lana come out. Lana's doing the usual USA, anti-USA stuff. She sings like a mock version of the USA anthem and then decides, I'll play the Russian anthem. That is the entire segment. It doesn't sound that interesting because it's not. It's the same stuff that you've seen from Lana and Rusev from day one. There was no run-in from Mark Henry. There was no him stopping the anthem, like insulting Rusev, or really good promo that Henry could do. That was the segment. So there you go. Same stuff as usual, unfortunately. They showed an ad for NXT Takeover, which obviously I reviewed at the start of the show, but the placing of these events are in the opposite way. NXT, and obviously they state a lot of stuff that NXT Takeovers this week. You can only get it if you buy the network. NXT to me personally, is the biggest selling point of the network. To be able to watch NXT, to be able to catch this really great, almost like this unknown entity to the majority of wrestling fans, and watch some really good wrestling of an hour show that's more often than not very, very good. And I thought that this was going to be their only thing towards it, and I was praising. I was saying, "Oh, that's pretty good," that they're at least referencing the fact that NXT Takeover is this week, on the main show. And then they decided to go one further. This is me praising WWE, which we haven't done the last couple of weeks. But this was a great move by WWE. They decided to give people a taste of what you can expect at NXT by basically giving you the main event in a tag match. And I was going crazy. I was like, "What? NXT is here?" And it's the official debuts on the main roster for Sami Zayn and Tyler Breeze, Adrian Neville. I know Sami Zayn and Neville have wrestled on these shows before in something dark matches. They may have even had some sort of involvement, in SmackDown or something along those lines. But still, this is when they put the spotlight on these guys, and they performed a very decent tag match. Showed a lot of the reasons very quickly of why you should watch NXT. And essentially, it was a tag match with Tyson Kidd, Tyler Breeze, Sami Zayn, and Adrian Neville. Zayn and Neville teaming up, which quite a big foreboding into the actual match that they had, so that's pretty good. But it came with all the good stuff, some really good wrestling, some high-flying, quick stuff, and Adrian Neville's Red Arrow to finish off the match. And to an idea, it was a great idea by whoever came up with it, and it was one of the better parts of the show. And it made, I can only imagine that it made people think, okay, I might catch this Takeover. And then if they watch Takeover, I promise you they're going to want to see more NXT. So good stuff by WWE, good placing here. As good of an advert as you could get for NXT on this show was to give them a little taster. So this was good. And you know what? I'm kind of disappointed that I don't automatically expect WWE to do that sort of stuff, but they don't. But it was good stuff. Really good booking. I can't praise it enough. Really good stuff. So we go from that to Jerry Springer and the Bellas. Yes, the Bellas. The Bellas, which I know Matt says that he booked his holiday ages ago, but I call BS on that. He did it so he didn't have to be around to watch more Bellas stuff. That's what I'm saying right now. And we knew before this segment started that it was going to be bad. And some people may reference that saying, "Are you going into the wrong mindset with it?" Can you really blame us after the last 2 weeks of Bella BS? Bella BS, there we go. You can coin that phrase. The fear of watching this was genuinely scary of any of the stuff that the Wyatt family have done. Scary stuff. We'll explain it here, and I'll explain the reasons why the Brie stuff, Brie Bella and Nikki Bella, just isn't working. Flat out. It's horrendous. It's all the wrong reasons why people watch wrestling. Okay? And the reason why, also, that this is coming up. You may be somewhat shocked. Brie is sporting a new entrance music. Her new entrance music is not great. It's a lot of the divas tend to get very generic, sort of pop music coming down. Brie's isn't that much different, but she's got Brie mode splattered all over the Titantron and stuff like that. But the segment is bad. You know it's bad. I know it's bad. Even Jerry Springer knows it's bad. He must do. He's old enough. I don't know. He's been running an awful show for the amount of time. So maybe he thinks he's good. I don't know. But they end up recapping all of the bitchy moments from Total Divas, which unfortunately I have seen. I've been watching Total Divas for the podcast. Well, when I say that, my wife's been watching it. I've been catching on with it, so I know roughly what's going on. And it hit me. This entire Bella segment is a byproduct of Total Divas. It is. New season's coming up, guys. And they have this clash of the Bellas all the time on the show. They're the biggest stars on Total Divas. There's no getting around that. They're the most prominent featured, I would argue, on that show, the Bella Twins. And with Total Divas coming around and WWE perceiving it as a success, we said ages ago that Total Divas, you're going to be seeing a lot more of these girls in the ring and coming into the stuff. And we said we were fine if Total Divas does what it does outside of our Raw shows, but more and more it's seeping in, and it's getting in more and more and more. And this Bella segment is a byproduct of that, absolutely a byproduct. Even more so the fact that they start introducing family members in this segment that have already featured in Total Divas. So you've kind of already got they probably already got the idea from watching the show, if I'm not honest. If I'm honest with you. So yeah, unfortunately it doesn't seem like WWE are going to get any. They're not dropping this. In fact, they want to give more time each week to these segments. And Jerry Springer's going on about how he's basically he's doing more so. He's fueling the fire more so. If anything, he's not really getting anything resolved. He's kind of getting these girls riled up against each other. But they show a bunch of footage from their family. They're obviously reading off lines. They're doing their best to act like their family members, the Bellas, are doing. You know. I don't understand why they would include more people in this feud who can't act in a angle that relies so heavily upon people acting well. You know, it's like I would put a guy, a bad basketball player, in the finals of an NBA tournament, even though that's when you should play your best players. Doesn't that seem very odd to you? You know what I mean? That it calls for the best of the best of the best to pull off something, and yet you're including more people that can't actually get this over. And this culminates with the Bella's brother being brought out, who tries to tease that he's actually going against Brie, and then he does actually go against Nikki, saying, "Oh, you're tearing our family apart." BS. It's bad. Okay, guys, the acting is fucking horrendous. It is so bad, and it basically culminates in them fighting again, them fighting over Jerry Springer, who gets involved with way more Bella than I think probably as much Bella I think that the King wanted to get during his segment anyway. But it's the whole segment of it is absolutely horrendous, and it's almost comically so. That it's actually funny to watch for all the wrong reasons, but WWE don't want it viewed that way. But the way they're presenting it to us is of that fashion. It looks stupid. It looks bad, so bad in fact that I'm very close to just ditching this altogether, not even reviewing it on the show, not even watching anything to do with it. But we have to take the good with the bad, don't we, on here? So it comes to the point where apparently them fighting over Springer has injured him, and he can't get out. He can't stand up, so he has to be carted out. Stephanie McMahon, he's fine, guys. You can tell these things very quickly. How quickly that stretcher was brought up, and how Stephanie was overacting the entire thing. He's fine. Don't you worry. Although the majority of you guys obviously caught on to that. So if he's going to get injured with getting the Bellas rolling over him, I say we put him in a match with Brock Lesnar and see how long he lasts. Yeah. I'm obviously joking with you guys. Can you imagine that, though? 16 German suplexes later, and there's not even a little small molecule of Jerry Springer left in this world. But I would like Brock Lesnar to grab this entire segment, this entire rivalry, and German suplex it 16 times. That would be fantastic. Can we have that? That would be awesome. But no, it's going to continue, and it was bad. It was lengthy, large chunk of Raw. None of it was entertaining. None of it was worth watching. They're all acting bad. It's unbelievable. It's at times loses its own continuity. It's talking of bits where we were talking about earlier on about the whole fail of the week stuff, about the angle about having he went against the script and all this other stuff, and that being an embarrassing moment that I wouldn't want other people that don't normally watch wrestling to watch that. This is exactly the same thing. I wouldn't want to show this to people who don't watch wrestling and say, this is what I watch each week. Because they'll look at me and think, okay, this guy's a bit off, a bit dense. So, there we are. And it's going to continue, guys. It's not done yet. Come on, they brought in Jerry Springer to do this, to try and get some mainstream publicity onto this. And you can thank Total Divas for all of it. Goldust against Stardust and the Matadors. No, Goldust and Stardust against the Matadors. This is what happens when I do a solo podcast and it goes on lengthy. I don't have Matt to correct me where I need it to be done. This match is too quick. It is too quick to be referenced as good. A match has to go over a certain amount of time before I perceive it as something worthy, and this match did not go that long. And Goldust and Stardust did get the win, as you would expect, to build up towards their tag match. Then the Usos come down, attacks Stardust and Goldust, even with the crutches that one of the Usos is holding. I can't tell them apart. It ticks things along, going forward. It's the usual kind of build up to what's going on with this rivalry. I would much rather give Goldust a good 5 minutes with a mic in his hand, and because he seems to revel being that heel character. Just let him be it. Just get him to tell a story on the mic. It'll really get me into this rivalry. I'm already into it. I'm looking forward to it. A tribute to Joan Rivers is done. I can understand why they did it. She has been involved in WrestleMania. She's been involved in a few other shows that WWE's done. Obviously, a very long time ago, no less. But she has been involved, so I can understand why they made at least some reference to her. And in fact, that's a good move by WWE. Don't like the woman personally. I don't find her funny, and I think she's extremely rude. That's just my opinion of her. But I do wish her family, have an easy time. But that's just my general opinion. And in fact, when you listen to Chris Jericho, who on his podcasts talking about Joan Rivers, he makes a reference to the point that he actually had an event with her where she pretty much pulled the rug from under him. And I'll go into more detail. I wasn't planning on going into more detail, but I will for you guys that don't want to listen to the entire podcast or find the podcast that Jericho did. But essentially, he was due to be on this red carpet fashion thing on Joan's show, okay? And the producers had asked him to be on there plenty of times, over and over again. They kept asking him. He didn't want to go. He wanted to go to a concert, right? Or just do whatever he wanted to. It wasn't something he was involved in. But they eventually kept stacking up the money, and thought fair enough, it'd be good publicity. I'll go, And when he arrives there, he's told by the producers, you know what? Obviously, it's Joan's show. She'll cut to you when we tell her to, or when she's ready, and get your opinion. Then we'll snap back to Joan, and it will go from there. Fair enough. Sounds alright, You don't bring a guy that doesn't know that much about fashion to host the show, someone else's show, no less. So he's in the role that he expects to be in, and that's fine. Okay. But as the show goes on, he's not actually having anything cut to him. He's waiting for them to go to him and get at least a little bit of feedback from Jericho, maybe a small quip here and there regarding what other people are wearing and stuff like this, and But he's essentially standing there. He looks more like a bodyguard than anyone involved in the actual, in the actual show itself. So after the show, the producers come up to him, and Chris is obviously annoyed at this point. He's explaining it here, and you can tell I would have been ticked off myself if I was in that situation. They come over to him and say, we're very, very sorry, but Joan just wouldn't cut to you. She wouldn't cut to you. She refused to go to you for anything, and we told her multiple times she just wouldn't do it. We're really sorry, but that's just the way it is. So Chris was like, fair enough. Leave it there. I'll get paid regardless. Go off and do whatever I wanted to. But then Joan catches up with him and proceeds to lay out a whole pile of BS onto him, saying, "Oh, the producers never told me to cut to you, and you know what? I will make it up to you. You're such a handsome man. I'll come on Raw whenever you want me to, and then we could do a segment of Raw. It'll be great and everything." And then Chris is explaining that Raw has at least 10 times the amount of viewers that Joan had for her show. So essentially, it was her bullshitting to try and get on Raw. So yeah, in that sense, she comes off as a very sometimes manipulative and vindictive and talking behind your back sort of person, which is the kind of people I don't like. I wasn't a fan of Joan Rivers, but still, I wish her family all the best going forward. It can't be good regardless. And he does make a very good point. I don't want people to come away from this podcast saying Jericho hated Joan Rivers. He does state on there that, he only met her once and that was that. And she could have been nice all the other days out of the year. He just doesn't know. And, same as for me. The times I saw her, I wasn't a fan. Wasn't a person that I think I would like. But who knows what's, behind celebrity doors. You just don't know. So, this moves into Titus O'Neil against Adam Rose. This is awful. The show was hot and cold across the board. We're talking about the Jericho Wyatt cage match, which was great. The NXT stuff was excellent. The Paul Heyman promo with Cena was excellent. And then you get stuff like the Jerry Springer Bellas and this BS that's coming up right now. So Adam Rose, he shaved off his beard. Maybe he's being referenced more on television, so he may as well shave his beard. I always got the thought that maybe last week they jumped this thing on him, and he hasn't been involved so long in Raw. He thought, I might as well just grow a beard. That's the way it's been. But more bunny nonsense. If you didn't like the bunny stuff last week, you ain't gonna like it this week. That's the way it goes. And it is quite ironic. The whole thing about Alberto Del Rio, and you think, what am I talking about Alberto Del Rio? Ricardo Rodriguez was more over than Alberto Del Rio was, and it's getting to the point now where Adam Rose's bunny is getting more over than Adam Rose's, which does not bode well for Adam Rose, of course. So essentially during the match, there isn't much going on in the match. Slater decides, I'll attack the bunny. Why not? Because the bunny is getting more and more involved. He misses the attack. Adam Rose then wins using the party foul. Another match that is just way too short to ever be considered as good. You know what I mean? The bunny then goes to the top rope and bunny splashes O'Neal. And going back to that same thing again, we wonder why wrestling fans sometimes laugh at non-wrestling fans sometimes laugh at us. Because you watch bunnies splash people. Don't mind the comedy every now and then. This wasn't funny, so we can't really call it comedy. Probably a poor choice of words there. Now the whole thing about it is that a lot of people are stating that it's Darren Young in the suit, that hence why he's trying to hinder Titus O'Neil, with the things going beforehand. As far as I know, Young is still on the injury list. Apparently he's close to coming back, but it's going nowhere, guys, and why should I be interested? I just don't... It's just not interesting. Why would I be interested? Just not good stuff. Renee Young is backstage with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns says that he has the antidote for Autumn's Venom. That's essentially the entire promo. It's needless. It's not good. WWE likes these little mini interviews that aren't really interviews. It's just essentially one question being asked, a corny response, and then it ends. I don't like it, personally, but there we are. Then comes the main event of the night. A rematch for SummerSlam, because remember last week Randy Orton told us that their SummerSlam match didn't mean anything, so we had to have it again. Nice of Randy Orton to let us know that. The match itself was okay. It was alright. The problem is that I had tuned out a lot at this point. 3 hours is a very long time to be watching a show, as I'm going to go into at the end of the Raw recap. But yeah, it's not necessarily the guy's fault in the ring, but 3 hours is a lot. I mean, can you really stay 100% enthused into a show over a 3-hour format? Imagine if some of these other shows that they were battling against, shows like Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, some of the excellent shows, Game of Thrones, they run an hour-long format, because anything longer than that, some of the stuff isn't going to get through, and 3 hours on Raw sometimes, more often than not, it's just too excessive, just really huge. But the Authority, after this, at the end of the match, they come down and beat down Reigns when it looks like Reigns is just about to get the upper hand. They lower the cage from earlier on in the night. It damn near impales Rollins on the way down. And I mean, you have to look at it. It's scary, man. Obviously, hopefully it wouldn't have done anything, but it does look like he had a close call. And looking back on it, that looked pretty awkward. I mean, these spikes aren't small or anything along those lines. Basically, the spikes are what's set in the cage, But it did look awkward. But essentially, with that, it leaves Reigns and Orton locked in the cage. Reigns spears Orton, but then gets splashed by Rollins on top of the cage. Essentially the same thing that Jericho did earlier on in the night. Then the Authority proceed to come in and basically beat down Reigns with the chair. And then they do the curb stomp on the chair. So I don't see how that is worse than what they did to Ambrose. But apparently, according to Orton, that was worse. So there we are. The Raw of Revenge beatdowns, there was many of them, to start up. We had the beatdowns of Reigns at the end. We had the Goldust and Usos beatdown. The Sheamus and Cesaro beatdown. Sheamus and Cesaro leading into a physical match there. So, but I have to give them props. Not one schoolboy roll-up pin finish in this entire match. It's a miracle. Modern day miracle. Thank God. So whilst a lot of the matches did end way too early and there was distractions, at least it wasn't done in the same format that we're so used to, the most devastating finishing move of all time. So that's the show. It was good. It was alright. There's some good stuff to see here. There's also some bad stuff you have to wade through, unfortunately. It's not the next coming. It's not as if this is a show to give me much, thinking, okay, they've definitely turned the corner here. But this was a better show. But at points there, when you think of they're spouting the word season premiere over and over and over again, and yet they give us more Bella segments. They're giving us just really random small parts of the show that don't really need to be there. It feels to me overall that the show needs tightening up a lot, and that segues me a lot into the topic of the week, actually. So that's Raw. I do say that you should catch it. It's worth watching, but take it with a pinch of salt, shall we say? So let's go to the topic of the week. Before my throat gets even more raspy, I'm just not nearly used to talking this long without Matt having his 2 cents every now and then. So this whole thing is that I've been noticing a lot recently. Okay, Raw being 3 hours is a massive detriment to the product as a whole. Now, I have not seen many shows since they switched to the 3 hour format. And I mean, you've got to think they've had over 100 episodes at the 3 hour format at this point, because they went 3 hours as of the 1000th Raw special. So they've had a long time. You think 100 episodes. Wow, that's a very, very long time for them to be on 3 hours of Raw. I still state the same now, all this time, after so many Raws, after they made the change into 3 hours, that it was the wrong move. Just overall, it was the wrong move. And the reason why I state that it was the wrong move are the reasons going below. Is that what WWE have essentially done by making Raw a 3 hour show is that they've actually deducted 2 hours of storytelling from their week. And you may think, what? But they've added a week. Yes, but adding that week has now made it so WWE book Raw as the be-all and end-all of WWE's product. So SmackDown is now irrelevant. So they've lost those 2 hours of storytelling. So, in that sense, to me, they have lost 2 hours of storytelling each week, and they've added one. So technically, you say they've lost one, but SmackDown is irrelevant. So they fit all their stuff onto Raw. The extra hour of Raw each week will strain your creative team, no doubt. That's 50% extra they have to book each week. And that's going to take their toll, and you can already tell creative are running out of their creativity, which is quite ironic. Quite ironic in that sense, that they're running out of their creativity, and you can see it now. How many of the same finishes have we seen? How many of the same rematches have we seen? How many times after a big event are we having these hangovers where they just don't seem to know what to do, so they give us the same thing that we had the month before? They rely on that card a lot. And you think that the extra time would give them more time to benefit towards their rising stars to get them over. But how many also, then, in the same thing, how many times have we seen these same people be involved in less than 3 minute matches since the extra hour was implemented? And it's an alarming amount. How many times have we seen Adam Rose? Adam Rose hasn't had an over 2 minute match since he debuted. And he's supposed to be one of the big call-ups from NXT. He has been near worthless to them. Now there's exceptions, obviously, with the Shield and the Wyatts. Wyatt's less so this year, but the Shield definitely are the poster boys of what NXT can do for you going forward, and if you are given time. But there's also a long list of people that's been put in. Look at Bo Dallas now. He wasn't even on the show this week. Wasn't even involved this week. They didn't have time for Bo Dallas, even though he's apparently involved in a storyline with Jack Swagger. They didn't have time for him on a 3 hour show. Very odd. But so to compensate for the extra time, WWE so obviously they've got an extra hour. They think, okay, we need at very least 50% more wrestlers on Raw to cover the extra hour. So to compensate that now, the WWE has probably more so than they've ever had in their entire span as a company. They have an over bloated mid-card roster. The amount of mid-card talent they have is boggling. The fact that some people can just get instantly forgotten and brought back into the show this week. Since when have we seen Kofi Kingston and Big E Langston? They're mid-carders. They're not around. fact, they were supposed to be involved in a stable, and apparently WWE don't have the time to get that stable over. Apparently, according to them. There's loads more. Zack Ryder, who is a low guy, he's not even on the mid card, barely featured on the program, but he's on their books. They've got too much of a roster because they overcompensated for that fact, and now they are at the point now that they still, in their eyes, don't have enough time to get all this talent over because they keep going hot and cold on people. They keep giving these people less time than they would on a 2-hour show, and you're scratching your head thinking, how is that possible? But it is, and they keep doing it. So yeah, all this mid-card talent just don't get the time to get themselves over. So they've got a bloated roster of guys that had their chance, but WWE are throwing shit at the wall, seeing what sticks, and they're just keeping these guys on the books to wrestle odd matches every now and then. It's why sometimes they can do these battle royals filled with mid-carders, and you may not have seen half of them for 6 months, but they're still on the roster. It's just a shame. So how many shows at the third hour? Let's talk about the third hour in terms of how you're watching a show. I referenced it this week. When I got to the main event, even though the match itself was okay, I'd lost steam by that point. The third hour, how many times have I watched a show all the way through, and at the third hour, I'm burnt. I'm burnt out. I can't watch more wrestling. It's too much. The amount of times for this show that I've had to watch Raw in 2 sittings, as in an hour and a half and an hour and a half, to watch it all the way through. That more often than not, that's what I will do, because I can't hack 3 hours of Raw in one sitting. It's too much. Far too much. 3 hours. That is crazy amount. Way too much wrestling. You think with 3 hours of Raw that they could have, at very least, one match on the show that goes 20 minutes. 20-25 minutes to really show you what wrestling can be on a weekly basis, especially with that mid-card talent that can do that for you. But we've had a series of weeks on Raw, sometimes months go by without you seeing said match of that caliber. Yet they've got 3 hours to give it to you, and they don't. WCW made the massive mistake of moving to a 3-hour show, and it stretched everything out too far. And what it essentially has done, the 3 hours of Raw, is that it's made a good 2-hour show stretched out to be a less than average show over a 3-hour base, over 3 hours. Stretching it out to 3 hours doesn't give you a stronger show. It's just basically stretching out your show, making everything thinner. There's not enough there. So it's just they've got more time than they know what to do with, so they're not giving you good stuff to watch over those 3 hours. And they're full of these 3-hour Raws, and then they give you these little mini interview segments backstage or stuff like this. How many times have we seen that it happens each week? Because it's the interval between these things, because they feel they have to do it because the show is long. It's just far too long. Look on a week. On the worst week in terms of hours that me and Matt had to watch, there was an NXT special, TNA that I was watching, Raw, and a pay-per-view at the end of the day. Let's count that up. 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of TNA, 2 hours of NXT, so that's 7 hours already. Pay-per-view, that's another 3 hours. That's 10 hours. 10 hours of pro wrestling. You even take TNA out of that, it's still 8 hours. 8 hours. Who in their own right mind, who has a life of their own outside professional wrestling, which even though I do a wrestling podcast, I do have a life outside of it. Who in their own right mind has 3 hours of a week to watch wrestling and honestly believes that they're going to be entertained for all of those 8 hours? It's impossible to do. You can't do it. Yet WWE do that. They give you too much at one time. And 2 hours, if someone gave me the choice now of a 2-hour condensed show, all killer, no filler, over 3 hours of mediocre television, I guarantee you most people will go along with me and say we'll go back to 2 hours. I would love them to go back to 2 hours, but they won't do it because they'll see it as a failure, But going back to the WCW thing, WCW did that, and they realised pretty quickly that it wasn't the right deal. Yeah, sure, they were having 1 more hour of television over Raw, but it made the entire show worse. It oversaturated the show. It stretched it out. When your creative team are so burnt out, they don't know how to fill 3 hours of Raw in a week. That you've got a mid-card talent pool that is so bloated and full that half these guys can't even feature most of the weeks. It's all these reasons are the reasons to me that Raw should seriously consider going back to a 2-hour show and giving us a really condensed, strong show each week, rather than them trying to fill up time, which it seems a lot of the time they are trying to fill up time. If it was a 2-hour show, look at all the stuff that they could cut out of this. The Titus O'Neil, Adam Rose stuff, they could cut that out. Okay? I know they would still do the better stuff because they think it's good, so they would still do that. Okay? So we can't get away from that. But we could have missed the Ziggler Miz segment of seeing the Miz's ass plastered all over TV. We could have missed the small little segments of the Authority talking backstage, of Orton stating that he was going to do something worse to Reigns than you've never seen before. They could even cut out Jericho being battered, because that was a little bit random and didn't lead to much. A lot of this stuff could have been cut out, and then that way, there's a lot of this filler could be immediately just taken out of the show, giving you a nice, condensed 2-hour Raw. Oh man, that just sounds so good to me. It sounds so good. It sounds like what a wrestling show should be like. But here we are, 3 hours. And to answer people's questions before they ask it, do I expect them to go back down to 2 hours? No, they won't do it. Especially now the network's launched. They won't do it. They need, in their eyes, they need more. They need more time on television. When, in all fairness, they actually need to look at it in the other way and say, actually, we need less. We need to do more with the time we have, rather than trying to fill the time we have. And that's the way they should be thinking about it. But it's been a very long time since they've acted along those lines, so, as we said, don't expect it to change. But there's my reasons why Raw being 3 hours is a detriment to WWE. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because it is an interesting subject to talk about. And I will raise it a little bit up next week and see what Matt thinks of the whole thing, because I know he doesn't like the 3-hour Raw format. But I think he's a little bit more in favour of it than I would be, but he's still quite against it, as a majority of people are. So, yeah, that's our show this week, guys. And I hope that you guys did enjoy the Raw. I've been nervous. Enjoy Raw. I hope you did enjoy Raw, of course, but I hope you enjoy this show. I've been nervous all week doing the solo podcast. I'm not used to doing them, so I do hope that you guys did enjoy the show. And if you did, I'd really appreciate if you gave me a thumbs up on the video, or if you're a new listener, subscribe to the channel so you can catch our episodes every single week, and you'll be able to catch the usual stuff with myself and my co-host, who will be back then. And yeah, just let me know in the comments if there's any questions that you'd like us to answer next week. Let me know if you enjoy the podcast or anything along those lines. We'd love to hear back from you guys, and we'll respond to the vast majority of messages that we get from you guys. We do enjoy conversing with you. And in fact, I think Matt got a tweet from someone who listens to the show on our podcast, and the only reason that he watched an NXT match that week, which he was going to miss, is because one of you guys tweeted him. So there you go. There you go. You have power with the show. You're very free to interact with us. But I hope you guys did enjoy the podcast, and we will be back next week. And things will be a bit shaken up, as we said, because I'm going to be in a different country. We're going to be recording it next to each other over the next couple of weeks, which is going to be quite awkward, in terms of how we do things usually. But then after that, everything will be back to usual for many months, and any of this sort of interference in our usual plans will be knocked out. But yeah, again, just to end the show, thank you again, guys, for supporting the show. 100 subscribers. We've now gone over 100, but 100 subscribers. Thank you, guys. Very means so much to us. From myself and Matt, we bid you adieu. We will see you guys next week for more Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. And thank you a lot for watching. Have a great week, and bye-bye.